here on Live Bet Saturday as we keep it moving on this Saturday, August 17th. He's Jared Smith. I'm Joe Ceraulo. And hey, that guy in the middle of your screen is Tony Cutillo, kind enough to stick around for another segment here on our progressive guest line. Tony, a lot of great stuff in the futures market in that last segment. But we didn't get to all of it. And we talked about Saquon Barkley, who, I absolutely love, right? I mentioned I'm a Penn State and a Giants fan. So I'm in shambles now that he's down the turnpike in Philly. But there is another running back in the tri-state area who plays for the other, fake New York team who might have just as good a year as Saquon, man. I'm incredibly high on Breece Hall. I think he's absolutely instrumental to the success of the Jets this year. What are you expecting out of Hall in this futures market for this upcoming season?
Wow, there's a really nice bet on DraftKings. It's 1,000+ rushing and 500+ receiving. I honestly have no idea why that number is that low. I look at it and I look at a guy last year that was 6 yards short of 1,000 yards, but only got the ball 223 times out of the backfield, easing him back in, coming back from that injury. And then he also had 95 targets last year with a bunch of stiffs quarterback. Right? There's like honestly, let's think about it. There was no AR last year, right? So again, if you look at that and you look at what Aaron Rodgers did for Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers got Aaron Jones paid in Green Bay. He was averaging 65 to 66 catches every single year, and that fell off with Jordan Love. So Aaron Rodgers does like to throw the ball to the running back. So to think that he's not going to have 500 yards, last year was 76 for 591. So in that offense, with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, he is going to obliterate that number, in my opinion.
And you give Joe Douglas a lot of credit. He has been really good in the running back drafting department lately. Not only Breece Hall, but also Israel Abinakanda, who's kind of on the outs now because they drafted the kid out of Wisconsin, Braylon Allen, who looks fantastic in camp. So now you have Hall and Allen, and you can kind of go king to the queen on the chessboard. Like, I could see Breece Hall being the guy that gets split out, and Braylon Allen kind of being the, the joker that's in the backfield, being more of the traditional running back role. It'll be interesting how the Jets handled that tailback position this year and kind of who gets the lion's share of it. Speaking of lion's share, that's what you're focused on with fantasy football, Tony, and I think it's a great time for the conversation because a lot of people are drafting over the next week or so as we start to get these preseason games under our belt. What's the first thing you look for? Do you take the preseason, like say for instance, you're drafting tomorrow. You get to watch all the preseason games today and tomorrow, and then tomorrow night you draft. Do you take anything from that, or is it all projections and where we're going to project to the regular season, or do you use the preseason as a guide?
It's so funny. A lot of people ask that, and I am one of those guys that look at nothing in the preseason whatsoever. And for me, all my studying and research happens before preseason games are even played. I'm listening to coordinators. I'm listening to coach speak. I'm watching kind of schemes, saying, okay, we mentioned Saquon Barkley, right? I'm going back and watching Dallas days with Kellen Moore. How did he utilize the running back position? And then I'm looking at the advantages now compared to what they were, especially if a guy's changing teams. But the one thing I will say, and I preface this with emphasis a lot, please do not go by touchdown equity. You cannot. That is a premium position in fantasy. You cannot project how many guys are going to score touchdowns. What you can do, though, is you can project the opportunities. So, for instance, Jalen Hurts, right? We talked about 13 to 15 rushing touchdowns. You can't project that, and you can't put that in your projections. You can't say, oh, he's going to score 15 this year, I think. No, you could say he's going to have 25 opportunities, but do not look at touchdowns. To me, I look at week-to-week consistency, Jared, and that's the way I try to win in my leagues.
So, Tony, when you're drafting, and I really like what you just said, because some people, I think, put way too much emphasis on preseason results, and I have historically typically been like you, where I don't pay much attention to preseason. We were joking about it a few segments ago. I just placed my first ever preseason bet. I took the Browns first half today, -1, because I love their quarterback depth, as opposed to, who Minnesota is going to be running out there, assuming with the JJ injury that Sam Darnold might not even see the field at all today. When you're drafting, are you one of those guys that is, you got to take a running back first round? Are you now in the new school of where I'm at, it's got to be a receiver in the first round? What's your draft strategy in those early rounds? And is Saquon your number one pick this year?
Oh, that's an interesting one because, what is the number one pick? I'm going to shock the world when I tell you who my number one pick is, and I'll tell you why. But real fast draft strategy, I go by tiers. If you have to draft by tiers, it's overall value. Listen, fantasy football is overall value now. You can have, depending on the league you're in, I do in a league where it's all flex in 5 offensive positions. So I could have a run and shoot with a quarterback at 5 wide if I want in a PPR league. And so it all depends on your scoring system, but you have to look at what those premium positions are. So for running back, so to speak, you have about 4 to 5 guys that are studs. The rest, there's a lot of parity, right? So if those guys go, you know what? Why are you going to reach for a running back? Even if you need one, doesn't matter. You'll get one later. So always look at that. When we talk at number one pick, I'm going to tell everybody, man, my number one pick right now, and it's because of safe, is A.J. Brown. And this is not Philadelphia bias. And I said this on Sirius, and I got 35 phone calls and people telling me I'm crazy, right? But here's what I will say. Why is it not Tyreek Hill? Because I'm scared. Why is it not CMC? Because I'm scared. Why is it not Saquon? I'm not scared, but AJ will have better numbers. It's all about being safe. If you're drafting number one overall, you better make sure that the guy you get gives you everything without question. And that's what A.J. Brown does. Oh, and by the way, real fast, the difference between A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill is about 300 points, respectively, over the course of 17 games. So, or 300 yards. I'm sorry, 300 yards receiving over 17 games. Come on, man. Anybody can make up 2 points a week. So you really have to look at that. So I'm going A.J. Brown.
Yeah, it's a good approach. I think, and there's a couple of things with fantasy that are unique this year. I think the new kickoff rules are going to have an impact, and here's why. The new kickoff rules are going to increase the average starting field position, which means there will be less yards to gain for the receivers and the running backs. The scoring, though, will be higher. So more touchdowns, which is a more volatile statistic, but less yards, which is more dependable, more sturdy, more stable. It makes the fantasy football week to week and betting on props, over-unders, touchdowns, etc., incredibly intriguing. What is your take on the new kickoff rule? And am I on the right track with my analysis here?
I'll be honest with you, Jared. You're spot on, man. And it's the reason why it's so hard not to look at that touchdown equity because of the short field, right? But that's why I look at yak guys, right? And from the receiver position, because I want guys. That's why I love Tua so much, right? There's a future prop with Tua for 30 plus touchdowns this year because he has nothing but yak guys. Devon A-Chain, you can give him a screen pass, he's going to go 90 yards. Tyreek Hill, give him a 5-yard out, he takes it 70. Right? Jalen Waddle the same way. And that's why I like A.J. Brown because of the same thing. So looking at that kickoff rule in perspective, not only is the 20s into red zone, obviously, 20 to touchdown for the red zone is going to be important, but in between those two 20s is going to be more important of how many times your receiver or running back is going to get targeted. And that's why I'm looking at A.J. Brown.
Love it.
Yeah, I think when you look at that shortened field, a guy like A.J. really has value there because think about Tyreek, right? Most of his value is in the long game. Like you're saying, right? It's deep plays. AJ, once you get into the red zone, once you're on the goal line, he's got that big body where he's as reliable of a target on the outside as exists in the NFL once you're inside the 20, inside the 10. Tony, I'm interested when you're drafting, who are you just in full fade mode on? Who would you not touch with a 10-foot pole in this year's draft?
I am full fade on the Cincinnati Bengals. I am not touching one guy on the Bengals. And I'm being honest, I don't like what happened in the offseason. I don't like how they just shipped away Joe Mixon. I don't like the contract status with T. Higgins. I don't like some of the comments from Joe Burrow about making sure I'm healthy, maybe not going full force in certain areas. And I think Jamar Chase is going to be the odd man out in the sense that, everything's going to be kind of forced in other areas, and he's going to be lackluster as well. Again, guys, I look at safety in this, and I say that word so much. I don't want to worry about it. So if I had the shot to take A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase, I'm taking A.J. Brown. Even if Jamar might have the opportunity to get 20 or 30 more points, I don't care. I want safety. That's what I want. And that's why I'm full fade on the Bengals, because I do not trust what's going on in that team.
Okay, so Tony, last 20 seconds or so here. When you say full fade, Jared and I were talking earlier, there are 14 teams favored to make the playoffs this year. History in the last 15 years shows us 4 of those 14 will miss the playoffs. Cincy minus 260 to make it, plus 205 to miss it. At better than 2-1, do you think the Bengals miss the playoffs in the final 10 seconds or so?
Here's what I found out last year in Philadelphia, man. If there's something brewing on the sideline, something brewing in the locker room, it goes out onto the field. So I do like that. I'm a risk taker, so I take that risk.
Like it.
I love it. Tony Cutillo, my man, thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
More Live Bet Saturday after this as we wrap up hour 2, guys. Don't go anywhere.